Good morning. Welcome to Consular Live. I'm your host, Mario, with our special guest, Jeff Osweiler from the Non-Immigrant Visa Unit. He's the chief, a special guest with us today to discuss all things pertaining to J1 visas. We are excited to receive your questions. We know that you also are excited to pose your questions. Again, feel free to type in your questions along this conversation. As you know, the J1 visa program has a very rich legacy. It was started in 1962 by Senator Fulbright to encourage the interchange of ideas, skill sets, and talents. So the U.S. is very committed to the J1 visa, and we again look forward to fielding your questions. Jeff, would you introduce yourself?
Sure. Again, Jeff Osweiler. I'm the chief of the non-immigrant visa unit here at U.S. Embassy Kingston. So we are responsible for processing all non-immigrant visas, including J's, which are a really important part of the work we do here.
Awesome. Thank you. Jeff, given the season that we're in, we have a number of candidates for summer work travel. Do you have any advice on some of the key issues they could prepare for their interview?
Well, the first thing I'll say is I want to thank everybody out there. If you've been a participant before, if you've been trying to get into the program, I want to thank you for your patience. It's been a rough couple of years for the J visa program. We've had some challenges with COVID in 2020. Of course, we couldn't really do any visa processing in the J category because of COVID conditions. In 2021, we had a bit of a late start because of a presidential proclamation that precluded us processing any of those cases right up until the 1st of April. We hit the ground running at that time, and we were able to take care of most of the demand for J visas last year. This year, thankfully, we've got an early start and a strong start. We're really committed to trying to satisfy fully summer work and travel demand here in Jamaica. Jamaica, of course, is a leading country globally for summer work and travel visas. We issue more of those types of visas here in Jamaica than any place else. So it is a priority for our section, and we want to make sure you're taken care of. I know many of you are trying to get into the system right now, making appointments. Please continue to look at the system. We do have appointments available on a rolling basis. They're opened every week, and we're trying to make as much of that availability on the system as we possibly can. Today, we're really going to focus on the end of the process, which is visa application and issuance. And as you mentioned, I'd like to give just a few tips and guidance, things that can kind of help us as we go through this process together this season.
Absolutely.
So the first thing I'll say is, and I mentioned this a little bit my opening remarks, come early. We're making a lot of appointments available, but we do have limited staffing, and we want to make sure we satisfy as much demand as early in the season as we possibly can. So go on the system now, try to find an appointment. If you don't see one today, keep looking. We're adding these on a daily basis, and they're constantly being repopulated on the system. We can't guarantee that kind of availability will continue throughout the duration of the summer. So very important to get your appointment as early as possible and to come in as early as you can. This season, we're not going to be able to process J visas as emergency or expedite cases. So it is important that you get a routine available appointment as soon and as quickly as you possibly can. The second thing I'll say is, if you come in for your visa appointment, make sure you're prepared. Make sure you've got your DS 2019 in hand, that it's current. Also make sure your SEVIS fee is paid and that you have evidence that SEVIS is registered in the system. If you come without necessary documents, it's likely your case will have to be temporarily suspended while we await the documents, or even have to ask you for an additional interview, and that will delay the issuance of the visa. Please come prepared to that appointment, and we'll be able to help you more quickly. The third thing I'll note, some of you who've been through this process before, you might have seen this pamphlet. We want to make sure you know your rights in the United States. You're going as an exchange visitor. You're protected under US labor and other laws. And we want to make sure you understand what your rights are while you're in the United States, and that you have a point of contact in case of need. Very important you understand that. In fact, so important, we ask that every applicant certify to the officer that they've read and understand the terms and conditions of their work in the United States. As a corollary to that, also make sure you're aware of your responsibilities. So any J visa comes with very specific terms and conditions. Make sure you understand them before you travel and go to the United States. For example, here in Jamaica, participation is limited to just 4 months. No program can be longer than 4 months. Some might be shorter, but none can be longer than that 4-month period. Recall that you must return by the admit and tell date given to you at the port of entry in your passport. So when you arrive at the port of entry, the CBP officer, Customs and Border Protection, is going to stamp your passport, and it's going to have a date listed on it that says when you're supposed to return to your home country. Make sure you respect that. If they've stamped it incorrectly, for example, if it doesn't allow for the additional period of stay after the completion of your program, make sure you note that at the port of entry, or that you have it corrected fairly soon after you arrive. And we can point you to some links and guides to help you do that. Also recall you can only work for the employer and the sponsor specified in your application. You can't jump to a different employer or use a different sponsor while you're in the United States. It's limited to what is listed on your DS 2019 that you came to interview with. Recall as well that if you leave your program early, for whatever reason, and that happens, you must depart the United States if you depart that program early. You cannot remain. Your status is conditioned by your participation in the program. If you're no longer participating in the program, you must exit the United States. And finally, you are required to return by the start of classes in the following fall term, unless, of course, you're graduating and moving on to something else. Just remember, this is a program geared for students. Student status is part of the requirement for participation. So you must return by the following fall term in order to avoid any issues in any subsequent years of participation in the program. So just 4 things. I'll go over them again at the end, hopefully, but I wanted to allow as much time as possible for questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff, for covering those 4 points. You as a listener will find those very useful and time-saving if you apply this advice given by our non-immigrant visa chief, Jeff Osweiler, prior to your interview. Jeff, we do have a question. Aside from the J1 visas, is NIV entertaining other visa applicants, other visa categories, B1, B2, for example?
So we have actually been opened more or less for routine business since August of last year. Depending on COVID conditions, we've had to scale back. We have limitations on staffing. We've also tried to respect social distancing limits in the section. But in terms of the span of appointments or the spectrum of appointments we're taking, it's really across all the visa categories and classes that we normally would do, including B1, B2. It just happens that the wait time to get a B1, B2 appointment, a normal tourist appointment, is fairly lengthy. As we get new resources, as we're able to scale up our operations again, hopefully that will change and the wait time to get those appointments will go down. But right now, we're really focused on taking care of very high priority visa categories. And for us, that's largely H2 workers, temporary workers that go to the United States, F, which are students that are going to study in the United States, and of course, J, which is one of the reasons we're giving so much availability at this particular point in time.
Thank you, Jeff. Could you speak more on the J1 internship program? What are some of the tenets involved there?
So J encompasses a number of different exchange and experience opportunities in the United States. Usually in the internship category, it's focused on a professional experience that is meant to give you direct professional, either training or development in a specific field. And that could be a wide variety of fields. The one thing I will say is that the officer is going to want to make sure that the internship is relevant to whatever your study and professional development is. And as with other categories, certain types of things are limited or prohibited as part of an internship program. For example, interns cannot participate in manual labor. So interns are not intended to be a labor source that would clean rooms or cook or do other sorts of things. It's really meant to be a professional development opportunity, not labor.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. There's another question with regards to someone who is documentarily qualified, but they've been waiting for over a year for an NIV interview. Will their documents expire given that they have been waiting for over a year?
This is for a non-immigrant visa interview?
Yes.
Okay. So, we encourage anyone who comes for a non-immigrant visa interview,
I apologize, for an IV question, not for an NIV.
So I'm actually a representative from the non-immigrant visa unit, but if you have a question regarding your specific case or whether your particular documents still remain valid for the purposes of interview in the immigrant visa section, I'd suggest you reach out directly to kingstoniv@state.gov. It's a dedicated inbox for immigrant visa questions and issues.
Awesome, thank you. How long can a student participate on the J1 visa program? I know you stated for Jamaica it was 4 months.
4 months.
Are there other criteria involved depending on your program, or is that a hard cutoff, 4 months?
4 months is a hard cutoff. That's the maximum. And usually that's determined based on the academic calendar of the country in question. So generally speaking, in Jamaica, the break between terms is roughly between May and the beginning of September. So that's what sets the boundaries for participation in the program. It can be less than that. You can certainly participate in multiple summers in the program, and many do. But the maximum length of time on any one program is going to be 4 months.
Thanks, Jeff. Can you speak to the sponsors involved in the J-1 visa process? And if a student is qualified with the same sponsor, could they use a J-1 multiple times? The same sponsor multiple times?
So there are some possibilities within the same sponsor to change employers, because sponsors are umbrella organizations that are placing summer work and travel students in a variety of positions in the United States. But do work closely with your sponsor and recruiter in any move that you make. You cannot change sponsors. You cannot leave the terms or boundaries that are established in the DS 2019. That's the form you're bringing in from your sponsor at the point of the interview.
Thanks, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Jeff, we have another query about if someone is going for their first time, however, they're in their 4th year of college, they're a senior, what we would consider a senior. Mm-hmm. Would they be eligible to apply for the J-1 visa? So
even students that are graduating or have graduated can participate in the summer immediately following their graduation. Again, they're still limited to the 4 months of participation, even though they're not going back into class that fall. And all the other requirements and regulations still apply.
Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.
We do have another IV question with regards to our daily appointments. I would encourage all inquiries for IV appointments to contact us at KingstonIV@state.gov. Again, that's KingstonIV@state.gov. We have officers standing by to answer your questions. In regards to J-1 internship and training, can you tell us more about the hospitality aspect of that? Can you go on a J-1 visa for hospitality reasons, for example, in hotels or cruise ship or whatnot?
If it's, let's say, for example, a management internship, something that's focused on professional development in a professional capacity, then yes, absolutely. The thing, again, to be aware of, though, is that the internship provider cannot require you to do manual labor as part of that internship. You might be exposed to or trained on how they manage those aspects of the operations in a hotel or resort, for example. But you yourself are not meant to do manual labor as part of the internship experience. That is specifically prohibited.
Thank you, Jeff. And Jeff, what if a J-1 visa holder wants to go above and beyond and they are told to do things by their employer that is not specified in their contract or the agreement, but they're afraid to come forward and express that? You did mention knowing your rights. Can you speak more on that?
Right. So, one of the reasons you have a contract with an employer, an internship provider, is to establish the boundaries of the work or the participation that you'll have in that program. And it's meant to protect you, and it's why it's required. If you have any questions at all about whether you're being asked to do something that might be in violation of U.S. labor law, I certainly encourage folks to take this pamphlet in hand, keep it with you. There's a phone number right on the front you can use to call, ask questions, get onward referrals, and get assistance if you have those sorts of issues with an employer or an internship provider.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Jeff, as far as the appointment time cutoff for J-1 visas, will April be too late for J-1 visa applicants to make an appointment?
So it depends on the start date of your program. We will continue to offer J visa appointments as long as we possibly can and in the greatest number that we possibly can. There will be a point in the summer at which we're not able to offer as many of those as we are right now. It's one of the reasons we strongly encourage folks, as soon as you have your DS 2019 and you're ready to come in for interviews, schedule that appointment, come in and get your visa process out of the way. Because as we get further into the season, we have less and less bandwidth to be able to dedicate to J visas.
Thank you. We do have a number of queries on B1, B2 visa applications. Should they be deterred from coming to the embassy, given that our priority is on, as you mentioned, the F, J, and H visas?
If you have an appointment, certainly keep it. Come for your appointment. There are appointments. We've opened a very limited number up as new appointments over the last few weeks, for example. But I want to remind folks we've got relatively limited staffing right now, and we have a sort of triage and priority order among consular services that requires us to dedicate resources in other directions at present. For example, our first responsibility, of course, in a consular section is to American citizens and satisfying demand for consular services to American citizens that are here in Jamaica, things like passports, emergency services, a range of other things. And I think folks can understand that's one of the primary reasons we're here. Next after that are immigrant visa services. So I know a lot of folks have been hoping and waiting to get through the immigrant visa process, might have been waiting for some time. But rest assured that that is part of the prioritization structure we have in consular right now. They're making a lot of appointments available, scheduling as many as they possibly can. We've upsized the number of staff that are dedicated to that unit in order to quickly process as many of those visas as we possibly can. Non-immigrant visa services come after that, and unfortunately, discretionary travel, like tourist travel for B1, B2, is not one of the higher priority categories for us right now. We hope to add more capacity, add more officers, and do as many of those as we can this year, but we will take time. It'll continue to be a challenge, and we do appreciate the patience folks have shown.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff.
Yep.
Jeff, there's a follow-up to using the same sponsor multiple times, which you spoke to. Another query, can they use that sponsor 4 times or more, or is there a limit to which they can use the same sponsor?
You mean across multiple years?
Across multiple years.
It's a good question. If you have a particular question about a specific sponsor, another address I'll give you for us in the consular section in non-immigrant visa services is kingstonniv@state.gov. That's our direct inbox. If you've got a specific question regarding your own case, let us know. I don't have a specific answer for that question right now, but people do go back to the same sponsors year on year. We have participants that have done this program 3 and 4 times every summer in between their studies. It would not be unusual to return to a same sponsor or employer in an onward year.
Thanks, Jeff. And another follow-on with regards to a sponsor. Does the sponsor have to set the appointment for the applicant, or can the sponsor make the appointment for the visa appointment for the applicant, or would the applicant have to make the appointment themselves?
It probably depends on the particular approach of the sponsor or recruiter. I know a lot of them do engage our appointment system and schedule or try to schedule appointments for their participants. For other participants, they might be scheduling directly or asked to schedule directly on the system. So just follow the guidance of your sponsor or recruiter on how they want you to proceed to secure an appointment on the system.
Thanks, Jeff. Again, with the 4 months you mentioned being the limit, the time you can remain in the U.S. for J1 from Jamaica. What about for H2B? Does that apply?
So H2A and H2B both have grace periods that are attached that allow you to remain in the United States after the conclusion of your petition. In the case of H2A, it's 30 days. In the case of H2B, it's 10 days. In both cases, that has to be reflected. Remember, I mentioned before, when you enter the United States, you get a stamp. It's called an AUD, an admit until date. That period has to be reflected in the time given to you by CBP at the port of entry. So when you arrive, it's important to pay close attention to that date they've given you. And if it doesn't include the grace period you're allowed by law, you want to raise that at the port of entry. They can help correct it. Sometimes they're just not familiar or aware. Or you want to correct that fairly soon after you arrive. Because if you stay beyond the AUD, that date stamped in your passport, you're technically in violation.
Could you request an extension to stay beyond that date?
Anyone who arrives in the United States can request a lawful extension. That's done directly with the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service. You file with them through their website. There's a fee that's involved, but you must file for that extension prior to the expiration of your AUD to have it constitute timely filed. That's usually what they look for.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yep.
Jeff, if a visa applicant was denied J1, could they immediately apply for another visa class?
There's nothing in the denial of the J1 that precludes or stops them from making another application in another visa category. Do pay close attention to the reason for the denial or refusal. If it's a hard ineligibility, something that specifically precludes you from entering the United States, it's going to probably come up again in another visa application, and you would also be ineligible. If it's something like what we call a 214B refusal, this is immigrant intent, that's not permanent. You can make another application if your circumstances change, or maybe there was something you didn't communicate to the officer at the time of interview. It's not a permanent ineligibility.
Awesome. All right, thanks, Jeff. Additionally, if one were to travel on their B2 visa, could they in turn still apply for a J1 visa?
So people do hold both concurrently. We've got folks that come to the window, they might have a full validity 10-year B1, B2, the tourist visa, and they're coming in specifically for the J visa because to participate in the program, they need that specific visa to be part of the exchange. So yeah, that happens all the time. What you can't do is have two concurrently valid visas in the same class, like two Js that are valid at the same time or two B1, B2s that are valid at the same time.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. Are the dates for the trainee visa hospitality and J1 internship both for 12 months?
So for summer work and travel, it's a 4-month limitation. Internships are generally going to be longer than that. A typical duration is 12 months. So you might have a full year where you're engaged in an internship. Many are 1 semester in length. Depends on the particular nature of the internship opportunity you have.
Okay, thank you. Could you explain how one would go about applying for the B1, B2 visa? What does that entail?
So it's a familiar process here in this country, but generally you're going to start with something called a SEAC or a DS-160. It's the actual application for the visa. This is a Department of State form that you fill out. In addition to that, you would have to pay a fee and you get a registered receipt number. With those two things, you can go onto the appointment system and schedule yourself for the first available appointment.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Mm-hmm. Jeff, you did direct the audience to KingstonIV@state.gov for IV-related questions. We do have we think, some positive stats. We have processed around 4,000 cases, IV cases, since we have opened the appointments back up in December. The pandemic has had a huge impact on our ability to process visas along with the presidential proclamation. So we're pleased to inform you that we are working hard to continue to reduce our backlog. We cannot guarantee an appointment date, but I know there are a lot of inquiry minds out there with regards to the IV appointment process. So just continue to stand by and we'll continue to give you information along the way. Jeff, back to non-immigrant visas. Can the applicant ask why they were denied a visa? Can the officer provide them the reasons to which they were denied a visa?
Sure, and not only can the officer provide them the reason, they're required to provide them the reason. So one of the things we give at the window in the case of a refusal, especially the more common refusals, is a bit of a notice or a worksheet or a letter that helps explain the section under U.S. law under which they were refused and the reasons why. We understand that applicants might naturally have questions or follow-ons to that experience of being denied. And of course, they have the right to write us at KingstonNIV@state.gov if they have any particular questions or issues they want addressed.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Jeff, another inquiry. If a student wanted to apply for a visa now, however, they're to get the appointment before the fall semester, would that be advisable prior to the fall semester in August?
If you've got the documentary requirements to make a visa application, we strongly encourage you to go ahead and do so. Just remember, for something like a J visa or a student visa, you're precluded from entering the United States too far in advance of the actual start date of your program. So for example, if I'm issued a student visa now for fall admission, and I present just with that student visa at the border, they're going to have questions about why I'm there so early, because it's really meant to facilitate your entry for the period of study to the United States. So just remember and respect the terms and conditions for entry on each visa as well.
Thanks, Jeff. So another question about the grace period of the J visa. As Jeff has previously mentioned, there's a 30-day grace period before your J visa starts, as well, your program starts, as well as a 30-day grace period following the end of your program. Again, thank you all for your questions. We're excited that you all are interested in the J1 visa. With regards to internships, can you speak on some internships that may not qualify? Are there internships that do not qualify for the J1 visa?
Well, for us at the visa window, I mean, the key arbiter of whether you qualify for an internship program is whether you have a valid DS 2019. That's the form that is basically certifying that you're a bona fide participant in an internship program. There are some other provisions for certain types of experiences or exchanges in the B category, but they're very limited. If we're talking about J internship, it really is the DS 2019, that form that you will receive from the internship provider or from the sponsor that conditions whether you're actually eligible for the program.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. Again, we have a number of IV inquiries. Again, I want to remind you all that the IV unit is currently offering daily appointments. Our MVC, or National Visa Center, is scheduling routine documentarily qualified cases. We have started interviewing cases. Please email us at kingstonIV@state.gov for further information. Additionally, you can also check on your visa category at travel.state.gov for priority dates. Jeff, can you speak more to what does it mean to have a sponsor and what vetting goes into having a qualified sponsor?
So it's a good question. The J exchange program is really run by a bureau of the Department of State called Educational and Cultural Exchanges, ECA. That bureau actually works with potential sponsors to certify them and register them as officially registered sponsors under the program. There's a certain amount of vetting, review, training that goes on between Department of State and sponsors that are actually seeking exchange student participants. Sponsors can be a wide range of different types of organizations. Oftentimes they're umbrella organizations that are placing students in a variety of different opportunities throughout the United States. So they focus on educational and cultural exchange, and they're a clearinghouse for maybe it's a particular type of employer or institution looking for students in the summer. They help place those students in those programs and places. Almost a recruitment type function.
Thank you, Jeff. Jeff, what does given the pandemic and the proliferation of online classes, what does the online class environment have on J1 visas? For example, if one was to return to school online and not in person, how does that impact their J1 visa?
So I think we've all had the experience in one form or another of online instruction or having, our own kids or affiliated students in online classes, just as a necessity of the pandemic over the last couple of years. There is a specific requirement in the J program that the student be registered in a accredited, bona fide, classroom-based four-year degree program or equivalent. It's certainly happened over the last couple of years that those types of programs have had to take recourse to online instruction in order to carry on their work. And that's fine. But if it's only an online school, if it's only an online program, if it has no classroom component, if it's not really a four-year accredited institution, it's not really eligible as a basis for participation in J summer work and travel.
Thank you, Jeff. Can you speak to a PIM petition?
Pims, the
PIM acronym.
Okay. Well, I mean, Pims is a system we use to yeah, I'm not quite clear on the question, but there is a system we use to verify that a petition is valid, like an employment petition.
Okay.
Called Pims.
Okay. Also, with regards to PIM, I would encourage you to email us at Kingston NIV@state.gov, that we can provide you with further information with regards to your inquiry. And we're getting ready to wrap up our session. We hope that your questions were answered. If you have further questions, feel free to reach us at all of the previously provided addresses: Kingston NIV@state.gov, Kingston IV@state.gov, or for American citizen related issues, Kingston ACS@state.gov. I want to thank you again, Jeff, for being our guest. And we look forward to having you again the next time we have our concert live. Again, I'm your host, Mario.